Good morning. How you guys feeling today? This nice, beautiful, early 9:30 gathering here today. Good to see everybody. Glad you guys are here with us today. Last week, we kicked off a brand new series called Amnesty, the anatomy of forgiveness. The anatomy of forgiveness. And we have been looking at this idea that's going to touch every and any relationship you will ever be in, guaranteed. If there is a relationship that you are in, there will come a time, the probability is high, that you will need to forgive that person for something. Guaranteed. We were talking about this with some people this week, and they were like, how do you, in a relationship with somebody who's even so far away, how do you have forgiveness and unforgiveness between you and like celebrities? I was like, man, I remember when Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston were together back in the 90s and 2000s, remember? And I had expectations that they were going to stick it out. They were going to be the ones that make it, but they didn't make it. And so I had unforgiveness in my heart against Brad Pitt. I thought, what are you doing, man? Like you missed it. We have expectations on anybody and everybody, right? Whether you've met them or you haven't met them. And if there's an expectation, there's an opportunity for hurt. If there's hurt, there's going to be an opportunity for forgiveness. And so we've been bringing this topic up because in this season of relationships, we want to talk about the common theme, the common thing, the string that's going to tie all of us together in relationships, and this is idea of forgiveness. And here's the concept that came to light or came to surface a few years ago for me, was that unforgiveness is a prison. And we're going to read about that in just a moment out of Matthew 18. Unforgiveness is a prison, but here's the thing. There's a doorway on each of the four walls of the prison of unforgiveness. And those doors aren't locked. And here's the thing, they actually don't even close that well. We've been using this doorway as our example of one of the doors that come with the prison of unforgiveness. And the doors in the prison of unforgiveness don't lock, and they don't even close that well. I got a ton of questions last week about why the door would never shut last week. People were like, hey, I got a drill in my truck. Can I fix that for you in between services? No. It's part of the analogy. The prison of unforgiveness, there's actually four doors that you could leave at any time. But the reason we stay in that prison is because we constantly go revisit those doors and shut them to keep ourselves in the prison of unforgiveness. And those four doors, last week we talked about the first one is the door of hurt, and how that hurt usually is about the original hurt or familiar pain from way back. The hurt is the first door. The second door is judgment. The third door is revenge. We're going to look at that next week, and I can't wait to get into that one. That's so good. And then the fourth and final door is a defense of ourselves. And so last week we looked at hurt. Today I want to move on to the second door. It's the door of judgment. But first, let's go to Matthew chapter 18. This is our text for our series. Matthew chapter 18, starting at the 21st verse. This is Peter asking a question about how many times he should forgive, and Jesus blows his mind and ours about what forgiveness really is all about. Matthew chapter 18, starting at the 21st verse. It says, Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Verse 22, Jesus answered, I'll tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. And again, we left that little asterisk or that footnote in there that most translations of it actually say 7 times 70. That we're going to unpack that next week when we talk about revenge. So Jesus says, not 7 times, but 7 times 70 times. Verse 23, therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began a settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold, it's important to remember the amounts here, 10,000 bags of gold is a lot of money, he was brought to him. Since he was unable to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. Verse 26, at this the servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay you back everything. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. Verse 28, but when that servant went out, he had just been forgiven of 10,000 bags of gold of that debt. When he went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins, a drastic difference in the amount. He grabbed him by the throat and began to choke him. Pay back what you owe me, he demanded. Verse 29, his fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, be patient with me, and I will pay it back, but he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants heard what had happened, they were outraged and went and told their master everything that had happened. Verse 32, then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said, I canceled all of your debt, the debt of yours, because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you? In his anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all that he owed. Verse 35, this is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother or your sister from your heart. Let's pray. God, thank you for the word. Thank you for preserving this text for us today. I pray that you would open our hearts and minds to hear what you would have to say to us. That God, you would do something great in our lives this morning as we gather together in this space, in this place here this morning. God, be with us. Let us sense your presence, Lord, and change us today. We thank you and pray all in Jesus' name. Amen. Before we jump back into our text, I would be remiss. I want to make sure that we are all kind of aware of what's going on. You hear a little more details about this later. This Saturday, we're doing something really cool called a faith-a-thon. A faith-a-thon. Anybody remember the telethons, the Jerry Lewis telethons? We're going to be doing something similar to that this coming Saturday at the new building. Whoop, whoop. That we are working our way to get that thing closed and wrapped up. But this is going to be a really, really cool opportunity for us to share our story to the world as Epic, but also share the stories of what God's done in your life, but also to share it with people that may not ever get a chance to come here on Sunday if you have friends that are out of town. This will be a Facebook Live event that you'll be able to share and tell people what's going on. And we really believe it's not going to be just an opportunity to raise funds, but this is going to be an opportunity for people to come and know the heart of God, right? The heart of a forgiving God, which is what we're really digging into. And so I want to just put that on your radar. Cal's going to give us more details about that a little bit later. But before we dove deep in today's message, I want to make sure I brought that up to you. Faith-a-thon is when is it? This Saturday. All right, you guys are with me. I appreciate that. All right, Faith-a-thon's coming up. Okay, forgiveness. Last week, I told a story about how a guy at boot camp didn't give me a high five. And he didn't give me a high five because he was like up high, down low, too slow. He didn't give me one of those where we can chuckle at a dumb dad joke. No. He was like, I'm not slapping your hand because you didn't go all the way. You didn't work out hard enough. Your effort wasn't good enough. You're not in with us. Now, he didn't say those words, but he says, look, I don't high five a halfway guy, so no, I'm not giving you a high five. Now, this little absence of a high five, it hit me hard. It cut me deep, Shrek. It hit me at a deep level, and I couldn't let it go. I'm like, who is this guy to not high five me? I was hurt by it. And last week, we kind of picked it apart and analyzed it from the hurt side of things, that the high five was really a form of rejection that echoed back way back into my life early on. And that's how the enemy uses hurt, is he uses things that hurt us that there is an echo of, an original hurt, a familiar pain that goes all the way back. And so we learned that a hurt is an unmet expectation. It's the gap between expectations and reality. And so we look deeper at that and realize that we have to go back to that original hurt. And that hurt is one of the doors in the prison of unforgiveness. So today, I want to move to the second door. It's the door of judgment. The door of judgment. Now, this door, the second door of our prison of unforgiveness, also does not lock and often drifts open. But we revisit this judgment to keep it closed so we can stay in the prison of unforgiveness. But it's not judgment of the person's actions. I want to make a really distinction here, an important distinction. It's the judgment of the person's motives. See, this is a whole different thing. Judgment of somebody's actions and judgment of somebody's motives fall into different categories. See, a judgment of somebody's motives means like, oh, they meant it. They meant it to hurt me. This was an attack on my character. Not only did they not say hi to me at church on Sunday, they purposefully didn't say hi to me on church on Sunday because they really wanted to get my attention. There was a motive behind it. Anybody ever had a judgment against somebody's motives before? Any people in the room? A few of us. Thank you guys for being honest. It happens, right? Not just the hurt, not just the thing that happened, but you start to judge the person and their thoughts, their motives, their heart behind what happened. They say, oh, man, they're attacking my integrity. They purposefully didn't invite me to the thing. There was intent behind it. There was a dark motive behind it. Well, I want to go to a few different sets of texts this morning. And first is the one I want to go to is the most famous text about judgment that Jesus gave us in the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 7, starting at the first verse, he says, do not judge, period. We could just end there, right? We could just roll credits. Don't judge. Don't do it. Okay, thanks, Jesus. We're done. He says, don't judge or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own? You hypocrite. Ugh. Now, that's a touchy word that's in most of this text here. Jesus is addressing some hypocrisy among the Jewish people at the time. They're keeping each other accountable to the law, but they're not keeping it themselves. You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And here's the text, here's a phrasing that just seems like, again, Jesus just, what's he talking about? Are we still talking about the same thing? Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under the feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Anybody ever read what Jesus is saying? You're like, are we still talking about the same thing? I don't know. It was judgment, there was some hypocrisy, and then you went to pigs. I don't know where we're at anymore. I labored over that, but I think something amazing popped out that we'll get to in just a moment. So I want to show from this text a few effects that come from a judgmental heart. When we're in this place of unforgiveness and we're going and shutting all the door of hurt, we're revisiting that, and we're revisiting this door of revenge, and we go and revisit the door of defending our own actions, but we keep coming back to judging. Oh man, I can't. They meant it to hurt me. It was purposefully. They wanted to wound me. It was an intentional thing. When we keep revisiting this place of judgment in our heart, there are some effects that come from a judgmental heart. The first effect of a judgmental heart is this: judgment invites judgment. You just heard what Jesus said, don't judge or you too will be judged. So essentially, when you have judgment in your heart towards another person, it robs you of God's mercy. Now, can you really block God's mercy from coming to you? Apparently you can. Mercy is not getting what you do deserve. And here's the point, is that we all deserve judgment from God. But thankfully, in his graciousness, he gave Jesus all the judgment and all the anger and all the punishment for sin. It went on Jesus on the cross, so it didn't have to come to you and I. But when we choose to judge others, to put ourselves in a place of judgment and of others, it actually blocks God's mercy from coming to us. And so in essence, God is saying, you want to judge them? Well, then I'm going to judge you according to what you are guilty of. And I don't think any of us want that smoke, right? So judgment invites judgment. Second effect of a judgmental heart is judgment blinds you to the bigger issue. I think Jesus was very specific and intentional with every word he says at all times. And he says, look, there's a speck of sawdust in your brother's eye. So fine, so minute and fine that you can barely see it. But there is a log hanging out of your eye. There's a whole plank out of your eye. And I love that he uses the eyes as the place of this analogy, because when I am in judgment of another person, it's actually blinding me of what's the bigger issue is. The bigger issue is I got a log hanging out of my eye. There is a massive issue. There's a massive thing hanging out of my eye. And when I'm in judgment of another person, I can't actually see it. Jesus says the speck in the log. Here's the question I would beg to ask. What are we missing in us by judging others? What am I missing in me by judging another person? What am I missing in myself when I'm worried about why he won't slap my hand? And I bring that story up because it's the silliest story that could ever be, right? It's the silliest. Have anybody ever been hurt deeply by something really stupid? Anybody, right? This guy cut me off. He didn't even let me merge. I'm gonna kill. I'm gonna drive this guy off the road. You know, if I see him, I'm gonna tell him what he means to me and numeric numbers, you know? Dude, he wasn't paying attention. He's probably texting just like you were texting and you shouldn't have been on your phone, right? We get hurt by the dumbest of things. This guy wouldn't give me a high five. And so I start judging his character, judging his family, his history, his state of life, his job, his life choices. That outfit's dumb. Look at it. It doesn't even match. Well, but there's a bigger issue at hand, right? What am I missing in me by judging him? Judgment blinds us to the bigger issue. Third effect of judgment, how are we going to know what's going on in us if we can't see it in judgment? Well, here's the good news. Third effect is that judgment actually shows you the issue. The judgment actually will show you the issue that's happening in your heart. Judgment is a mirror. Judging others is a mirror into your own heart. I love this verse, Romans chapter 2, the first verse. Paul says, look, you therefore have no excuse, you who pass judgment on someone else. For at whatever point you judge another, you are condemning yourself. Because you who pass judgment do the same things. There was a translation, like an Aramaic translation of this. It says, against what you judge, you will also revert. What you judge against, you will also revert back to. Now, slice this however you want, but here's the idea that comes up. When you have the ability to judge another person, you are either condemning yourself that you're going to commit the thing that you're judging the person against, or you only recognize it because you've first seen it in yourself. However you want to slice it, judgment is a mirror of what's happening in your own heart. So we need some self-awareness. Self-awareness is the gift of saying, hey, I'm feeling a certain way right now. Instead of just feeling it and letting that drive your actions, being able to say, whoa, I'm feeling a little anxious right now. I'm feeling a little judgmental. Why am I feeling judgmental? Why am I feeling anxious about what's going on? I want you to start paying attention at what you judge others according to. I want you to start paying attention, and when judgment starts popping up and you start one-upping people like this, like, is this guy for real? I want you to pay attention to what you're judging them to, because it's a mirror of what's going on in your heart. We need to ask God for the gift of self-awareness. Why am I judging them in that way? What's actually going on in me that would cause me to judge another person? Check this out. We judge others not by their failure, but through the lens of our own insecurity. We judge others not according to their failure, but through the lens of our own insecurity. The thing that you are scared to death that somebody would find out is the thing that you're probably going to start judging the world around. Not their failures, but it's actually a mirror of what's going on in your heart. Fourth effect of a judgmental heart: judgment wastes the best on the worst. Judgment wastes the best on the worst. Now, this goes back to what Jesus was talking about. Don't give dogs that which sacred and pearls before pigs. He's not referencing people as dogs and people as pigs. Let's make sure that that is clear. He's not talking about people as dogs or pigs. I think he's talking about the lowly places, the lowly ways of acting and thinking. The way that I read this is, hey, your best, don't waste it on the worst way of living, the worst way of interacting with each other. Your energy is sacred. Your thought life is sacred. Your time is sacred. The place in your heart, the real estate in your mind is sacred. Don't waste it on judging other people. There are more valuable things you could be doing with that energy, with that efforts. First and foremost, finding out what's going on deep in your heart. Judgment wastes the best of you on the worst of situations. You judge someone not when you assess their position, but when you dismiss them as a person. This is important for us to kind of really get a heart of what true judgment is all about. You judge someone not when you assess their position or what they have done, their actions, but when you dismiss them as a person. And I won't ask for a raise of hands, but I think if we've been around long enough and we allow ourselves to go low enough, as Jesus was talking about in the dogs and in the pigs, when we give our best of ourselves over to that, sometimes we can dismiss a person completely. They're nothing but a fill in the blank. Oh, yeah, that's just the way they are. They're nothing but a gossiper. They're nothing but a divisive person. They're nothing but you can fill in the blank with any derogatory word you want. When we dismiss them as a human being, as a person with nothing true to add to our life and to the lives of those around them, this is the lowest form of judgment. And Jesus is saying, do not dare lower yourself to that level. Racism, classism, all fall into this category. Oh, they're nothing but this type of person. They're nothing but a person from this side of town. Oh, that's just how those people think. That's just how those people act. I believe Jesus was addressing the darkest parts of the human heart and saying, do not dare lower yourself down to that place. Don't give your best to what's worst, to the worst of humanity. You're nothing but a fill in the blank. Now, I do want to talk about the proper use and the proper place of judgment, because judgment is a bad thing. It puts us in really God's position. God's the only person who can judge. It makes me think of Tupac's tattoo, only God can judge me, right? You know, maybe you guys don't know what Tupac's tattoos look like, but he has a tattoo that says only God can judge me. I think most of us in culture, we have that heart of like, hey, don't judge me, man. You can't tell me what's right and what's wrong. God says, don't judge unless, and you'll be judged too in something, you know, Hezekiah 3:16. It says that somewhere, which means you can't tell me what's right and what's wrong. Well, that's wrong. That's not true. We can judge each other on the basis of biblical judgment, of what that really is. Every time I talk about judgment, I try to remind myself, I need to preach a whole sermon on how to properly judge one another, because we actually can judge another biblically and properly in the proper way. How do I know? There's an entire book of the Bible, and you know what the name is? Judges. And guess who got put in their position? God. God put them in. God raised up judges to judge people. It's biblical. We actually are given permission to judge the fruit in another's life. But I want to make sure I say it this way. Godly judgment happens in relationship and through leadership. Proper godly judgment happens in relationship with one another and through leadership, right? You can replace that word leadership with authority. Proper godly judgment always comes through authority, and authority is God-given. Now, we don't have time to really unpack that, but what I do want to say is that it's not all judgment is out the door. It's the lowly judgment. It's the hypocritical judgment. It's the judgment with no empathy attached to it at all that really I think Jesus is talking about, that he is referencing. We talk about these three words a lot within the staff and the leadership: know, love, and challenge. And those three words are actually inextricably connected when we're in relationship with each other in leadership. You got to know somebody. You got to know them deeply, and you have to be able to love them in a way that they know they're being loved before you can bring challenge or correction to a person's life. I think what happens is we start to judge and challenge people at a whim. You know, oh, hey, you don't want to do that. Hey, that's wrong. You know, you're going to go to hell for that. Did you know that? Hey, here's a bullhorn. You're going to hell over there. The world's like, back up, bro. You don't even know me, right? I think that's the judgment that Jesus was talking about. There is a proper godly judgment that happens when we do it his way. We can have permission to judge the fruit in another person's life. I want to read one last set of texts this morning. It's out of John chapter 21. Last set of texts this morning, John chapter 21. Now, this is post-resurrection, and as I was kind of preparing for this, I never saw it in terms of the judgment, but it just popped out at me. It just illuminated in a totally different way. So Peter denied Jesus before the cross, right? I don't know him, I don't know him, I don't know him. Jesus told him he was going to do it, and he denied it. Yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to mess up like that. Dude, I am your star recruit, Jesus. I'm number one on the team, on the squad. I mean, who walked on the water? Does anybody remember that, right? Does anybody remember the walking on the water thing? That was me. I'm not going to deny you. I'm number one. Jesus is like, okay, well, we'll see how that pans out. So Peter denies Jesus. Jesus goes to the cross. Jesus resurrects. They come and tell the disciples that Jesus has risen from the dead, and they have these interactions with Jesus where he just kind of poof appears in the room. There's some amazing stuff. Well, Peter, after all these interactions, he just goes back to fishing, and not fishing for men, but he's fishing for fish, you know. In John chapter 21, Jesus appears on the beach while they're out there fishing, and he says, hey, guys, have you caught any fish? I love the shade Jesus throws all the time. Have you guys caught anything? No, thanks, buddy, for asking. something up with the moonlight. The fish aren't here. And so they finally realize it's Jesus. They come to shore, and Jesus already has fish on the shore. I love that. Verse 15 of the 21st chapter, it says, when they had finished eating that breakfast, Jesus says to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Now, the Greek words that he uses here are very, very specific. Do you agape me? Do you love me unconditionally more than these? Yes, Lord, he said. You know that I love you, but he said the word brotherly love, like we're boys. You know that we're boys, we're pals. Fist bump love. Love you, bro. Jesus said, okay, well, feed my lambs. Verse 16, again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that we're boys. You know that I love you. Jesus said, okay, well, take care of my sheep. The third time, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you unconditionally love me? Now, Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? And he said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Finally, his head's hanging. His pride has diminished. This condemnation that he was living in started to show itself physically. Jesus said, well, feed my sheep. Verse 18, very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and you went where you wanted. When you're old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you to where you do not want to go. Verse 19, Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, follow me. Jesus said, I want you to follow me. Verse 20. Peter turned. This is where the judgment happens. Peter's condemnation, he starts to project on other people. The condemnation he had been living in, and this sting of like, do you love me unconditionally? Do you love me unconditionally? Do you love me? I don't love you unconditionally. I'm a failure. I failed at it. Well, he starts to project that condemnation on the person next to him. Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. This is the one who leaned back against Jesus at the supper and said, Lord, who is going to betray you? That's the one who's actually writing this text right now. When Peter saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? This is the heart of judgment right here. God, what about him? You know what he did wrong, right? You know what? You know the times where he messed up. You know that time where he beat me to the grave and he whispered and told me, I'm going to write about this and everybody will know for the rest of time that I'm faster than you. How do you know this guy's got a prideful heart too? What about John? You know he's guilty of stuff. You know his wicked heart. What about him? See, that's the heart of judgment. We know that we're guilty, but we just want to start pointing fingers. What about them? You know what they did wrong. You remember that time they didn't wave at me on the mezzanine. You know that time where that guy cut me. You know that time he didn't give me the high five. What about him, God? What about him? Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. John gives commentary on this. He says, because of this, the rumor spread among the believers that this disciple would not die, but that's not what Jesus was saying. He only said if he wants him to remain until I return, what is it to you? He's saying, Peter, you're going to die, and it's going to be a bad death. You're going to give your life for me. I want you to be okay with that. Are you up for that, Peter, if that's the case? And what if you die a tough death and this guy lives until I return? Is that okay with you? In essence, he's saying, hey guys, I want to ask you a question. Is it okay that your life may not turn out how you think it should turn out? And is it okay with you if somebody else's life is better than you think it should be? Are you still going to follow me? Are your eyes on them? Are your eyes going to be on who they are and what they have done? Or is it going to be on me? Are you going to follow me? And John says, this is a disciple who testifies to these things and wrote them down. We know his testimony is true. Saying himself, I was there. It was me. He was talking about me. The condemnation that was on Peter's heart reflected out and tried to condemn the disciple whom Jesus loved. And Jesus, he says, whoa, shut it down. Let go of the judgment. Stop closing the door. Stop staying in this prison of unforgiveness. I want you to keep your eyes on me. 5 quick cures to a judgmental heart. 5 cures to a judgmental heart. Number 1, love God. First place we got to be is we got to love him. Jesus asked repeatedly if Peter loved him. It's hard to be madly in love with Jesus and judge someone in whom he died for. I'll phrase it this way. It's hard to be madly in love with Jesus and judge somebody that he's madly in love with. We got to check our hearts. Are you loving God? Number 2, second cure to a judgmental heart. He said, feed my sheep. Jesus gave Peter a mandate to take care of those that were entrusted to him. There's more work to be done. I love that saying that has kind of arisen, through the football season. Nobody cares, work harder, right? Jesus is like, there's so much work to be done. If you would get your eyes off of John, if you would get your eyes off of what you think he's done wrong, if you would stop judging those around you and actually just get to work, you'd be a lot better off. When I'm wasting my energy judging somebody else, it's energy that I'm not using at building God's kingdom. Second cure to a judgmental heart is to go feed sheep. Get to work. Third cure to a judgmental heart, give grace to others. We've got to be a gracious people. So I think when we talk about judgment in the church, maybe you're in this room and you wouldn't call yourself a church person or even a Christian yet, or one of those spiritual people, and we talk about judgment, you're like, man, Christians are the worst. You're probably nudging the guy who brought you. This is what I've been talking about. You guys are whacked. It's tough because we've been given a list of like the way to do it right and the way to do it wrong, and we're trying our best to live that way, and we want other people to do the same. Sometimes we screw it up. A lot of times, most of the time we screw it up. But we've got to be people of grace. That's actually our calling card, right? Jesus said, they'll know that you're my disciples by your love for one another, not by your ability to judge one another. He doesn't mention that. They're going to know that you're my people by how you love one another. We've got to be people of grace. A third cure to a judgmental heart is giving grace to others. Love this verse, Colossians 3:12, 13, and 14. He says, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved is the foundation. We're giving grace to others out of a foundation of love. It comes first. We are loved by God first. Clothe yourselves with compassion. Have compassion on other people. Kindness. Don't be a jerk. That's what that word means. Kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other. Man, even if they do it, even if they hurt us, instead of judging their motives as impure and with malice against us, Paul's like, dude, just bear with them. Just give them some patience, man. Cut them a little slack. Instead of judging them according to what you think their motives are, hey, just back up, ease up, bear with each other, and forgive one another. If you have any grievance against somebody, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them together in perfect unity. I think this word unity is important, and we don't have the time to dig into it, but I think when we live according to a judgmental heart, when we stay in this prison of unforgiveness, and we keep revisiting this place of judgment, we can't be in unity when we have a judgmental heart separating us, right? Bear with one another. Forgive one another as God has forgiven you. And put on love. Fourth cure to a judgmental heart, follow Jesus. I mean, just right out of the text, what did Jesus tell Peter? Just follow me, man. Get your eyes off of everybody else and just follow me. There was a saying that kind of came up in this rabbinical world that Jesus would have been in. There was this saying that was like, may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. See, the students of the rabbinical world, they would follow so closely to their rabbi that when the rabbi would go to the bathroom, I mean, they were going too, you know. When the rabbi would go to eat, they were right behind him. When the rabbi would take a left, they were right behind him. They say, may you be such a good student that you're covered in the dust that your rabbi kicks up. May you be covered by the dust of your rabbi. Maybe you follow so well that you're living that closely to him. I think one way that keeps us from having a judgmental heart is just by following so close to Jesus. And the only way that we can follow him well is by keeping our eyes fixed on him. Getting your eyes off of others. Getting your eyes off of what they did wrong. Stop saying, what about him? What about them? Fifthly and finally, fifth cure to a judgmental heart is just accepting grace yourself. We are the hardest to forgive ourselves. If judgment shows where you have received grace, start by getting some unconditional love in you. Jesus was very specific about this word agape. Do you love me unconditionally? What he was showing is, Peter, I love you unconditionally because I have every right to dismiss you right now. I have every right to judge you, to kick you off the team. But no, I'm bringing you back. I'm reinstating you. This is what unconditional love looks like. First place we need to start is by accepting God's grace for ourselves. And so if unforgiveness is a prison, right, and the four walls have doors on every side and those doors don't lock, the only way they could really legitimately stay in it is if we go and we revisit the doors and we keep them closed. Whoa. I can't let that open because then I can't get out of this prison. And the hurt and the revenge and the defense of my actions. Oh, man. And can you believe what they did? Remember how man, what a schmuck. Can you believe that? I can't. And then high five and I'm going to get him back one day. And I didn't even do anything wrong. And hold on 1 second. And you'd see what he wore the other day. I mean, it didn't even match. He had Nike on and then Under Armour. Like, come on, get out of town, you know? And we go through this exercise of insanity. We just keep those doors closed just so we can stay in this prison. The pathway out of judgment's door is remembering what you've been forgiven for. Last week we talked about the pathway out of hurt's door is kind of letting God do the healing process in us. To exit this door of judgment, it starts by me remembering all the things that he's forgiven me for. All the mistakes that God actually gave me grace on. That he extended mercy and didn't give me what I deserved. When I remember that, when I truly receive that, it becomes a whole lot easier to exit this door, this prison of unforgiveness, and walk away forever. It's easier to be freed when I first accept Jesus' love for me first. I ask you to take a posture of prayer across the room, heads bowed, eyes closed today. Undoubtedly, there are people that have hurt you. There's hurt in this room that I can't even begin to dream. I can't even get my mind wrapped around. There's people that have been wounded by parents and those that were trusted people in their lives, friends, family members, coworkers and bosses and neighbors, spouses, ex-spouses. If you've been alive any length of time, your heart will be hurt. It's guaranteed. And speaking of forgiveness, I know it's, you may be saying, Pastor Chris, you don't actually know what they had done to me. And I don't. You're right, I don't. But I do know this. If you stay in prison, you let the door of judgment keep you there, you're the one that's missing out, not them. So this morning, could we just pause and just accept some grace in our heart this morning? Because you have a lot to be forgiven of. Before we actually get on to other people and what they have done to us, we actually have a lot to be forgiven of ourselves. So I want us today, as we wrap up our time here, to be in a place where we can just receive some forgiveness ourselves. Because if we're to be honest, We've messed up. Scripture says we've all fallen short. We've all sinned and fallen short of God's glorious ideal. So this morning, before we step into a time of prayer, I want to ask if there's anybody in this room that has never actually asked Christ into your heart. You never actually began a relationship with him. This is a place where we need to begin this morning. And it's something we do every single Sunday, but this Sunday could be your Sunday. This moment could be your moment where you let the Savior in. You let unconditional love in, maybe for the first time ever. So if that's you this morning and you want to just welcome Jesus in, if you want to make some space in your heart for him today, in a moment we're going to pray. But before I do, I want to count to 3. And when I get to 3, if this morning you just want to accept Jesus, I want you to just lift your hand up. And there's nobody looking around, all heads bowed, eyes closed. 1, I want you to know that you're already loved. I say this every week because this prayer doesn't make you more loved. He loves you just as you are. 1, you're already loved. 2, there's nothing you can do to change it. Any mistake, any failure, any past mess-ups doesn't change God's love for you. You're already loved, and there's nothing you can do to change it. This morning, you want to accept Jesus today. 3, just lift your hand up. Nobody looking around. It's just saying, count me in this prayer. It's just between you and Jesus. Thank you, Lord. All right, across this room, whether you raised your hand or you didn't, can we say this prayer together? Say, Jesus, thank you for forgiving me. I admit that I've sinned and I need your forgiveness. But today, I receive your grace and mercy, brand new. Come into my heart again. Make me new. I am alive in Jesus' name. Amen. Yeah, let's celebrate this morning. All right, I want us to rise to our feet in our remaining time together. I want us to pray. I want us to worship together in a few moments. As the prayer team comes forward, comes find their place up front. We haven't dug too deep into the hurt that's actually happened to us, but I know when we talk about this concept of forgiveness, it has the potential of stirring up a lot of dark things in our heart. But this morning, if you feel God working on your heart to forgive somebody that's hurt you, man, would you come and find somebody to pray with this morning? Or maybe just like the message we talked about, you've had a judgmental heart against other people. You've lived like Peter has. What about him? And what about her? And what about what they've done? If you find yourself in a place of a judgmental heart, man, this morning, during our time of prayer, I invite you to come down. Find somebody to pray with. You can let go of that. You can accept the grace of God for yourself, and then you can become a conduit for God's grace to give to others. So as the band starts playing, I want to invite you to come forward, find somebody to pray with. Let's pray and worship together. God, thank you for your goodness and your forgiveness for us. Thank you for your mercy that, God, you gave it first. The Lord, you didn't give us what we deserved, but you gave us grace instead of it. The Lord, you gave us forgiveness, and you empowered us to do something amazing. You gave us life. So God, who are we to carry around this weight of unforgiveness, to stay imprisoned to unforgiveness? God, I pray this morning that a spirit of freedom would permeate this building. A spirit of freedom would come and saturate our hearts today. That we could leave this space free. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's pray and worship together this morning.